Hello, welcome to the Greenfield Files. I'm here with Alan Greenfield. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing splendidly. How about yourself?
Is it early in the morning for you, technically, at the moment?
Yeah, so to speak.
Oh dear. So, what have you been up to?
I've been on a writing jag,
Oh,
and I am currently working on something that's turning into a long essay that's almost a book. And all I can say about it at this point is it's a series of revelations about the Albert K. Bender case.
oh, interesting. That's good. And that's going to be. Is that a book or is that a Substack or both?
It will be on Substack. There's a take one up there right now, but that is not heavily edited. Uh, the polished version will be up probably within a month or less,
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
depending on my proofreader, not on me.
um, so today we've had to. It's more of a abstract, I guess, theme, but it's the use and abuse of evocation and invocation, I think. Was it just evocation? I've forgotten.
Well, I think you said the focus would be on grimoires.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I can tell you the original request was, how about the uses and abuses of evocation?
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah,
It's pretty much the same subject, just
yeah,
uh, as it were, the grammars that exist for doing invocation and evocation. So,
yeah. That's just the um yeah. So I guess one thing we should maybe just talk about what, like, ritual. You often hear the word ritual as technology. What do you think people mean when they say ritual as technology?
well, there are two different things that they could mean. One is something that is, I guess you would call it a contemporary fad, which is uh, the notion of, well, I guess Arthur Clarke's famous dictum, a truly advanced technology would be indistinguishable from magic,
Mm.
which I like. It's overquoted, but I like it. But that would be the notion that a consummate magician well, it started out on one of those Star Trek knockoff series, uh, something along the lines of a techno mage is someone who seems to be a magician in the traditional sense, but actually uses technology to essentially create effects, sort of like the amazing Randy uh, did for Alice Cooper when so that Alice didn't actually get beheaded in the middle of his show. It was they constructed a mechanism uh, to guillotine Alice, and of course Randy fixed it so that Alice is still alive and Randy is not.
No, although you can listen to Randy at any time on his interview on Sitting Now that we did many years ago.
Oh yeah, well Randy,
We've had everyone
I,
on this show.
I wish I had a copy of that long, long ago when he took over the Long John show on WOR, which is like one of the oldest radio stations in the world, really. Um, because in June of 1967, when we had the convention in New York, Randy was running the show, and Randy and Jim Mosley were very tight. So he had me and Tim Beckley and Daniel Cohen of, at that time, Science Digest, and uh, a woman who you've probably never heard of, Joan Reitner, who was the editor of the New Atlantean uh, from St. Petersburg. Florida, not the other one. And it went splendidly. And Beckley told me, or St. Timothy, as we now refer to him, as that it was like a 3-4 hour show that they replayed over and over. So it must have been a big hit. And that is a fond memory because Randy was one of the speakers at the convention that year and also took me out to his house in New Jersey and showed me his kinkajou, which, and also the things he and Jim Mosley had stolen from the, excuse me, had appropriated, I'm sorry, from the remnants of the New York World's Fair. Um, the, I guess it was the year before, so he had a bunch of uh, plaster Egyptian pseudo Egyptian relics, and yeah, he was an interesting guy.
I'm
I
gonna
mean, his views were.
I'm gonna drag you back onto topic. We've gone off on a James Randi rant here. So what you said there are two different versions of the of technology, the term technology that could be used.
Well, the version that I just mentioned obviously isn't magic in the sense that most people who are occultists mean magic.
Well,
Although
okay.
the border is closer than you might think, because up until 1600, 1700, somewhere in there, a stage magician and a an occultist magician, were considered to be two aspects of the same thing. You see that in the tarot cards of late medieval, Renaissance vintage, like the Tarot of Marseille, where um, the magician is sort of uh, juggling items on a table, and it's sort of like what did they call it? That game where they have three cups, and you have to guess which one the pea is under, and they move it around. Uh, something Monty, and I guess it's the full Monty, but we'll pass on that. The other version, which is what most people in occultism mean, is the use of magical power to invoke or evoke some uh, uh, preternatural or supernatural being in under a controlled circumstance, and that ranges from kind of low magic all the way to something like Enochian magic, where something is evoked or invoked. And you might want me to define those two terms, although I think your regular folks probably know the difference. But basically, that is the substance of the medieval grimoires, and all the way back to the Greco-Egyptian papyrus documents rediscovered over a long period of time, and probably before that, all the way back to pre-dynastic Egyptian Heka. So it's a very venerable art, and it is indeed designed to invoke mostly demons.
Yeah, I think we probably should define that. We should define the two terms, really. I think just because I know most people know the difference, but there's going to
Okay,
be some that don't, and obviously everyone's definitions can vary slightly as well. So
okay. Let me say something about setup first. In a classical evocation or invocation, and I will define them. The magician stands within a magical circle which has names of power around. It's a double circle, and they have names of power around the circumference. And then something in the center that is basically a protective, to protect you from what you evoke or invoke. And then separate from that, but similar, there is a triangle that is drawn, also a double triangle, and it has basically protective, like the names of guardian angels on the three sides of the triangle. And what one is doing in evocation is basically to put I mean, there are variations. Obviously, you're talking about thousands of years that this has been done. But you basically are bringing some spiritual force or entity, mostly entity or being, into an object, or just as frequently into a person, who then basically becomes oracular for the length of the ceremony, and hopefully not any longer. Um, an invocation is to actually bring that being into uh, into our reality, but
Corporeal form, maybe.
confined to the triangle, because most of these entities tend to not like being invoked, and a lot of them are ill-tempered, demonic uh, creatures. And I noticed the theme that you said, the, the correct and incorrect use. uh, and let me say that if you don't know what you're doing, that is definitely in the incorrect usage, especially people who don't much bother with the circle and the triangle, because if you just successfully invoke something like the demon Ashtaroth, it will eat you or absorb you, and you will thereafter be a manifestation of it. It's not a very nice creature. It can answer questions, and there are various ways in the classical grimoires to assess whether what it's saying is true or untrue, but it will try to lie if it's uh, something of a demonic nature. On the other hand, you have uh, the Book of Abramelin, which we'll have to discuss at some length, but basically that is to invoke uh, your holy guardian angel. As I mean, Crowley was at some pains to say, I only use that term because it is a ridiculous term for what is actually invoked. But the fact is, it's something that is uh, your protective spirit or inner being or whatever into physical existence.
And he came up with his own like multiple ways of doing it, didn't he? It wasn't just the Abramelin. It was I think was
Oh
it
yeah,
for
Abramelin. The very short version, because people always ask about it, is Abramelin is a almost a year-long process if it's done correctly, with no guarantee that it will be successful. If you've seen the film A Dark Song, that's a fairly accurate, if somewhat condensed version of what that's all about. The best thing about it, I think, is that I think the angel is accurately depicted as a benevolent being attached to the uh, ma- magician, or in this case, the aspirant invoking. And the angel's purpose is to get this person, instead of sending it forth to kill its enemies, to forgive. And that's whoever did that had done their homework
Hmm.
really well. But
Although
it
apparently
is,
he's apparently the guy that directed it is I think he's like a Christian. He doesn't believe in the occult. He's not an occult fan apparently.
but he might believe in angels,
Mhm.
depending on, and angelic magic is, well, in some more fundamentalist churches, that would be considered heretical and crackle, crackle, burn at the stake, you know.
Mhm.
But in others, that would be something that would be permissible because you're not invoking anything evil.
Mhm.
And there are people who are professedly Christians who do that. After all, uh, hold on to your hats, folks, if you don't know this. Uh, there's pretty good evidence that Jesus was a magician. He was depicted in early depictions with a wand, doing some of the miraculous things that he did. And his famous healing at the Pool of Siloam, which is at the base of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem and is uh, re excavated recently, well, in recent decades. Um, put spitting on the ground, making a mud pie, putting it on the eyes of a person blind from birth, and then getting them to wash it off in the Pool of Siloam and they can see. If that's not magic, I don't know what is. That's very, very high magic. And, you know, that would be something, if it were someone else, it might be considered heretical by some people. But here in the southern United States, we have all kinds of faith healers. And the faith healers pretty much do the same thing. They do the laying on of hands and heal in the name of Jesus. And the thing about it is, you can mock it all you want. A lot of the time, it works. Although I don't know of anyone who has grown a new arm, or you know, there are limits. So,
um,
so have I defined them? Invocation is bringing something from otherwhere into physical existence under controlled circumstances. Evocation is uh, bringing something or someone from otherwhere into an object. That's pretty much Bertio's approach, or into a person, in which case it resembles mediumship to a very high degree. In fact, I would
hmm.
say mediumship is a bastard child of uh, magical evocation.
Do you think evocation is sometimes overkill?
How do you mean?
Um, I'm not even sure what I mean by that. Actually,
Well, let me go into your mind.
yeah, it just flashed into my brain. I suddenly thought, is evocation overkill sometimes?
I think the use of evocation, invocation, if you're not really experienced and initiated at a pretty high level, and I don't mean that to be too hierarchical, it's just you don't do surgery if you haven't been to med school. And, you know, I mean, it just, if you try, you're just going to kill the person. And in certain classical cases, um, magicians have died during the course of an elaborate working. They've just been found dead the next day, and you know the rational explanation is they inhaled too much incense and choked to death. But I beg to differ on that.
Someone's just commented, possession is 9/10 of the law of Thelema. Michael Holfelder.
And
I thought
it's
it was good.
a wise statement. I
um,
I I like to for people to understand these things, but understanding it intellectually and participating in it,
Two very different things.
yes, it should be baby steps. In
Well,
other words,
I always say that you get these people that read the secret rituals of the OTO or the AA initiations, and they think they know what the initiation's about, but they don't. Not until they've done it, in my opinion, or
uh,
experienced it. But
110% correct in my personal direct experience. Yeah.
yeah, same. It's yeah. There's doing and then there's knowing from doing. I think someone said to me once. But do you regard entities or the entity that you invoke or evoke as objectively independent, um, psychologically generated, or is that distinction ultimately irrelevant? Do you think?
I think it's irrelevant because I'm not sure we're actually talking here. We're looking at simulacra of us, not at
Mhm.
the physical person. We're looking at electronic beams, beaming, whatever. I don't know the technical aspect of it, but I certainly can't see you, and you can't see me, and the audience can't see either of us.
Mhm.
But you can see a projection thereof. Does that mean you don't exist? I think you do, Ken.
Mhm.
Come on, fess up.
I like to think I do. I like to think I do.
And I think that I exist, which sounds like uh, therefore I am, but it's a little too pat. I just don't think that there is. Uh, what I often say is that I believe more than that. I think that reality is far more malleable and that
Mm,
includes everything in reality than we generally like to think. Maybe it's all a sort of uh, dream within a dream, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't look in both directions before you cross the street,
mhm.
because that imaginary car is going to hit your imaginary body, and that's the end of your incarnation.
I like Lon's thing. Was it? It's all in your head. You have no idea how big your head is. I always thought that was quite a good, quite a
Or
good.
what the back of your head actually looks like.
Yeah. Have you ever had an experience where? I mean, I know I have. But have you ever had an experience where um, something happened that made the kind of purely psychological explanation difficult for you?
Yes, absolutely. Lots of times. And um, I mean, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, yes? So, if you invoke something and have a particular purpose in mind and ask the entity or demand of depending on which school you're looking at, to do something, and that something, unlikely as it is, happens almost immediately, uh, I don't see how that could be a psychological thing unless you're saying it's mind to mind communication with, person X, Y, Z. A lot of that uh, during my long magical career, I used a lot of sexual magic, which is not quite what the classical grimoires say, but some of the things that were done with low magic, with high magic, would, under the most unlikely of circumstances, occur in conformity with what I wanted to occur within a matter of days and involving, uh, shall we say, third parties who had no knowledge of the ceremonial at all, and in fact, not even people that I personally knew. So even things that I think people should not do, like love magic because it has a karmic consequence that, again, from early personal experience, is always a disaster. You have to pay the piper, and the piper is usually from Hamlin. If you catch my drift, there, it's
I always think that was sigils. Sigils, people just do them willy nilly, don't they? And then
oh
they
yeah.
also make
I at one time I did a lot of talismanic magic, and I would construct a talisman in the same way as I would draw a circle around myself, but in miniature. And that's when I had a day job in the art supply business. So I had, parchment and a coating that I could use. And I meticulously drew actually, I drew on 777, which is actually a rather good grimoire if you want to get right down to it, and as a reference grimoire. And trying to think of a specific example because these are things that I did 30, 40 years ago. I kind of like to think that I have used less and less instrumentality and more, uh, I don't know what to call it, mental. Uh, uh, in other words, I use the ficus, that's the thumb through the first two fingers, as a wand now, whereas back in the day, I had a wand and a sword, and I would use all of those, to great
accoutre-
effect.
all
But
accoutrements.
you can eventually reach the point where uh, you can read the tarot without looking at the cards.
Yeah, indeed. Have have you? I suppose the other thing is, have you ever performed rituals that produced absolutely nothing?
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
of course. I don't know anybody, at least early in their career, if they are dedicated magicians, where you don't have just as many, if not more, uh, failures, if you want to call them that, or learning experiences, as I prefer to call them, uh, as successes. The ratio will depend on how advanced you are and how correct the method that you're using is. I mean, if you use well, the earliest form of the Abramelin ritual that we have was written in Latin. That's not necessarily the original language, but it was translated by Mathers over 100 years ago, and into English, and then got this outfit in Chicago made these. They're still around. You can still find them. These large red hardcover uh, uh, red books that have the Abramelin ritual complete in English, but it's in Victorian English. Victorian English is not the way we speak today, and often a word. Uh, this is a side thing, but the thing that was the ultimate goodbye with me and the OTO was an argument over the meaning of the word sovereign. I said to King Dave, uh, if I am a sovereign grand inspector general, that means in terms of what I do as an inspector, it's answerable to nobody, you included. And then we got into a long argument. So I looked in a dictionary from 1910 In other words, what Crowley would have meant. He obviously didn't mean a sovereign as in, the coin. And the definition other than that is independent of any authority, nothing else. So clearly that's what Crowley meant, but it isn't what the current OTO means. It means sovereign until we tell you otherwise, revolutionary unless we tell you otherwise. It,
I've just remembered why I said is the evocation overkill. By the way, but it was actually a question from Tim. He said, "In my practices, evocation often seem to be overkill. Often much easier to get what you want in other simpler ways." So the question is, when is evocation necessary? That was the question.
only when nothing else will work. In other words, if the magic for opening a door is not conjuring up a spirit to cause you to discombobulate and appear on the other side of the door, it's turning the knob and opening the door. And if you do anything else, it's black magic. In other words, it's using magic in a context where ordinary things will do. And that has a backbite that is ill-advised for anyone to do. You have to ask yourself, is this something, like money magic? If you're looking to outdo Elon Musk magically, you probably will not succeed. If you are poor and need an operation that isn't covered by your health insurance or program or whatever, that is a perfectly appropriate thing to do. And if you do it properly, it works. There again, that's from my own experience, not with, thank God, not that, but I have been through, how shall I put it, my poor periods, and using classical magic has almost instantaneous effects. I think that the only time it would not is if it's something that's inappropriate. So it was, I think, Steiner, the anthroposophist. Did I pronounce that right? Anthroposophist. Hello, I'm an anthroposophist. Oh, really? Is that like a theosophist? No, it's like a solipsist. It's a cyst of some sort, but it can be removed. Don't worry. Where was I going with that?
Steiner said,
Oh, yes. Steiner said, for every step magically, 3 steps ethically. And when I first read that sometime in the 1960s or early 70s, I thought, yeah, that seems to be a closest thing to a commandment you get in magic. You really have to say, okay, I love this person, but she doesn't love me. But if I hoodoo her properly, he will be attracted. And there's all sorts of low magic stuff that can be done that way. But if you do,
that's
you
that's
pay.
the plot of the hit film Obsession that just came out recently. Be
Well,
careful what you wish for.
yeah, exactly. And that is, these cliche expressions, they come out of actual life experience. So it's not ethical to bend the will of another person clearly in the opposite direction of where they, according to their own true will, want to go. So, I can formulate, alternatives where it becomes a sort of borderline case. Like you have a friend who is making noises that sound suicidal, and you do something to brighten up their world. Is that unethical because is that interfering with their true will or not? Uh, Exit would say it is interfering. I would say, because I've had to deal with this in my psychic friends days, you always try to give people some reason to go on. And usually suicidal people are actually deeply depressed people. Not always, but usually. And deeply depressed people, there's all sorts of stuff you can do for depression.
Steiner was a. It's often contested, isn't it? But Steiner was a member of the OTO. We know that now for.
Yeah, that's now I don't know for how long.
No, but he was
And
definitely Ulysses Black, who I do the I often do the podcast with. You've spoken with him before a couple of times
it
when we
gets
first had you
down,
on.
excuse me, but this is important. It gets down to which OTO was he affiliated with. I would imagine that it was the Kellner Royce
Yes,
OTO.
it was. Yeah, yeah, it was the pre Crowley OTO, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, actually, I'll stick a link in chat because Ulysses Black did a really good investigation on this, and I've just pulled it up, and I'll put the link to it in chat. But yeah, he found the carbon copies of the original document. So he was definitely at one point a member, but it's the Yoldi OTO, pre Crowley OTO.
That
But
sounds like Herr Koenig, who, whatever you think of his motivations, which are inscrutable as far as I'm concerned, has dug up all kinds of interesting information that deflates a lot of the
mythology,
revisionist history. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, he's an interesting guy. Like I said, I've said before about him. I'm not 100% sure on his motivations, but yeah, but yeah. Okay, so looking at the questions, um, Misspent Youth, Tom says, I think we need to start delving into the grimoires of Alan. He lists off a load of grimoires. We've got a lot of them here. Should we start with the Lesser Key? I think that's the obvious one to start with, isn't it? Lesser Key of Solomon.
It's where people start. It's either there or the Abramelin thing because they're widely available, and there's a big difference between the lesser key and the greater key of Solomon. But the lesser key is what, for some reason, I guess, is just more accessible.
Yeah.
Again, I would caution that we have access to a translation of a translation. So be wary of that. Translation is a very, very tricky business.
That's the Mathers one, isn't it? Or
Yeah.
yeah, the Mathers one. There's been one since then, hasn't there? There's been a better translation.
Yes, and
Was it Jake
it
Stretton
is
Kent? Who
better,
did it?
but it's still translation. Your
Yeah.
best bet is to have taken Latin in high school and have at least a good working knowledge. If you can read Caesar's commentary on his conquest of Gaul, you probably can understand it a lot better than, reading only a translation. I often quote something that I've never been able to find the source of, although I believe it's Robert Graves. And I may have mentioned it on this program before, but it does bear repetition. If it was Graves, it goes, all translation is a lie. A good translation is a polite lie, but it's still a lie. And I find that to be quite true. I mean, if they are contemporary languages, it can be pretty good, but there are all sorts of nuances in various languages, particularly if you get away from the European languages, which are, sort of, well, two sets, the Germanic and the Romance. But you get outside of that universe, your your referrals are totally different. And with Arabic or Hebrew or Aramaic or Greek, the uh, the understood meanings are not necessarily what the book says, and it isn't even necessarily what was true 100 years ago. If I'm a big fan of Victorian fiction, and there are certain words that I know what they mean because I read a lot of that, but they don't mean the same thing now if you used it in a current context that they would have meant in 1890. Uh, uh, a prime example of that, and beware of this one, the word love, as used in anything from late Victorian, Edwardian times, means, generally speaking, means sex or sexual. It doesn't mean love in the uh, Valentine's Day contemporary sense. Um, so, but it was not possible to say, unless you were P.B. Randolph, who had nothing to lose. Randolph would say, "The truth about sex!" Exclamation. But he was uh, born into a mixed racial family at a time when slavery was still uh, half of the United States. So he would, and he spent a good deal of time in the South. So that he was a free man of color was the term of that period. But uh, that doesn't mean that he couldn't have just been captured by slave catchers, the ancestor of the police. And it is. They had badges. It said slave catcher. It's it's bizarre now, but it wasn't bizarre in the context of the time. It was just wrong, you know.
Let's get back to to King Solomon. We've gone off on a mad one there.
If you're reading it and trying to do the rituals as in using the translation, and let me say one other side thing. I know I do become excessively anecdotal, although some of your listeners love it. They really like it. And some of them probably go, Greenfield's wandering off again.
And that's where the Greenfield Wrangler comes in and range you back onto topic.
Yeah, is that your function to
That's
bring
what
the old boy back on? Well, yeah, that's true. And I see, I'm doing it now.
early on, the listeners were dubbed me the Greenfield Wrangler because I'm quite good at dragging you back onto subjects. But
the Lesser Key is a very useful text in English, and you can, if you know what you're doing magically, you can safely use all of the information in it to do just what it says, the invocation, evocation, and towards the back of the book, I think, and probably tacked on later, are the very important exorcisms, which have a hierarchy. The hierarchy of the exorcisms is an exorcism, a very powerful exorcism, an extremely powerful exorcism. And you can divine from that you've successfully conjured up Lucifer, which actually is not identical to Satan in magical lore. Very, well, not easy, relatively easy to invoke, very difficult to get rid of. So those exorcisms get harsher and harsher, and finally, you're in a kind of literal sense beating the demon with a whip with barbs in it in order to get it to leave. And if you don't do that, you get the what I sometimes call the Mojave effect, which is Parsons' desert invocation, which seems to be still open and may be responsible for a lot of paranormal entities that have shown up since that working, which was 1946, 47, 46, I think. Complicated because it was near where the White Sands Proving Ground first atomic bomb was exploded. And I think that probably attracted all kinds of things. Anyway, if there are specific questions about a specific operation in the lesser key, by all means, let me know and I'll tell you what my experience with it is if I've done it. There are some that I'm somewhat wary of. I might mention a very derivative work, The Magus by Barrett from circa 1801, if I remember correctly, that probably are better for a modern person to use than the Lemegeton or the Lesser Key of Solomon, the Greater Key of Solomon, the Grimorum Verum. The further back you go, the more likely you are to misunderstand the steps that you need to follow. If you're studious about it before you try something, that is, you really need to talk to somebody who's had the experience, ask yourself some important questions, whatever. But if there's a specific from that particular grimoire, keep in mind that the basis of the term grimoire is in English grammar, and it means just that. It's none of them are designed to be advanced. They're designed to be basic magical text. My first reader.
The Dummy's
And,
Guide to Magic.
yeah, exactly. And I would think that if I were advising somebody, I hate saying this. Oh, Lord, forgive me for this. Possibly the best grimoire, as loosely defined, is Bill Breeze's edition of Book 4.
Mm-hmm.
It's modern, it's contemporary, it draws on Crowley, but it also has a kind of historical sense, and it uses, especially in his notes, I never criticized him as an annotator.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, I watched him compose some of this stuff. Um, um, Great annotator, lousy administrator.
Yeah.
They're not the same
Oh yeah,
profession.
you can't. I mean, you can't knock his editing on Book 4, especially. It's excellent.
Yeah, it is the definitive edition of Book 4, and it's not the one I started out with. It was the one by.
Is it Rigardi?
No, Rigardi was Golden Dawn stuff. That's a different. That's
I
a
thought
different chapter.
I thought he did a Crowley book as well. I can't remember which one, but
He did a book about Crowley, the best I think in its
yeah, in the
day.
Triangle. Yeah, no,
Right.
I'm sure he edited one as well, but I can't remember now. But maybe I'm getting mixed
Not
up.
that I know of. It was the guy that basically Crowley in his last days gave his.
John Simmons.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Okay. So Simmons.
and Kenneth Grant kind of worked
Yeah,
with him,
but
didn't he?
Kenneth Grant was a kid at that time.
Mhm.
I mean, he was a very. I think the older Grant got, the better he was at what he did.
Mhm.
He never stopped reading.
No,
He didn't just write, and it shows in his books. Sometimes in more detail than
I
people
think
would like.
the later Grant books get loads of heat. But I was talking to I can't remember which interview we were is one recently, but I think it was probably with Michael Staley, but I think the later Grant books are by far the better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're um,
more
Cult of the
complete.
Shadow is sort of, it's so detailed that it sort of loses the essence in the details,
But like Outer Gateways, Mauve Zone, all those books are great. I think they're his best works by a mile, by quite a long way actually. I think the earlier books are good, but the later books they're much more original and much more. You really get a sense of Grant's actual theories and ideas, and his complete outlook on things in those last three books. I think they're great. But
yeah, and I don't think in Crowley's lifetime he could have even thought a lot of the thoughts. First of all, he had some influence from Bertio, which he credits, and Bertio has this very close to my own theory. Basically, you can roll out other realities that either become real or are real or you get access to. And some people consider the Voudon Gnostic Workbook to be a grimoire. It is for me.
Not an easy read.
But it took me a year to read it the first time. And one of the things that I discovered in my dealings with Bertio is it's not sequential. What comes first in the book is sort of a come on. You can be a lucky hoodoo too. But you don't really get all of that unless you've taken the 4-year course of the Monastery of the Seven Rays, because all of it is a series of lessons put together as a volume, but were meant to be sent out once, I don't know how often, because they go back to the 1960s, but once a week or once a month. So you assimilated this particular thing. Grimoire Gede is a good example. Well, that is literally a grimoire within the book, and then you have to go on and Anyway, questions about the
one of the live listeners. And one thing before I ask a question, and I've
wait. How many dead listeners do we have?
Can one of the listeners just tell, or one of the viewers, I suppose, tell me if the ads are playing, because I keep forgetting to turn them off, and I just want to know how frequent they are, because I think it puts people off sometimes if loads of ads keep playing during the stream. I know it annoys me when I watch a stream and ads play, but I'm just interested to see how many, because
YouTube has gone ad crazy. That's my editorial.
But one of the questions we've been asked is, can Alan talk about Ars Notoria? Have you even heard of Ars Notoria?
No, neither have I.
No.
Are they talking about Liber Oz or what?
I'm sure.
Or the Wizard of Oz.
I'm sure actually the person that asked the question he's just left the question. Maybe he can elaborate a bit more, and we'll go.
Well, I'm not going to talk about anything that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, yeah.
Bad practice. Well, yeah, sure. It's. I have no idea.
What about Liber 418? That's a.
It's a standalone grimoire, if you want to call it that, as are many of the short books that are usually identified as Libers, particularly the Class A or Class B documents. And I believe lots of them are included in Book 4. And of course, if you have a set of the equinox, you have all of them, or pretty much all of them, maybe all of them. So that would be something.
I know what Ars Notoria is. Ars Notoria, it's just occurred to me. Ars Notoria is in the it's the academic. It's it's in the lesser keys. It's the academic. It's like the high learning grimoire, isn't it? It's or practice. It's like a oh god, what is it? It gives you like instant memory and things like that. It's the
Oh, I know what you're talking about now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
The magical memory, which is, let me say this about that particular aspect. I am leery of anything. It's a little bit like the notion of past life regressions. If you don't have verifiable evidence that you could not have obtained otherwise, be suspicious of that sort of thing. I think magical memory gets into a lot of. You asked at the top of the program, whether this was all
in your head.
in the head or whether this was external to us.
I'm being
And
told it's not in the lesser keys now. I think I'm right about the magical memory thing though. It's definitely it's like it's to give you like better academic prowess. I think it's
well, yeah, it does, but it also can be used to go forward or backwards in time. If I'm trying to remember it because it's an area of magic that I don't particularly like to use for the same reason that I never ever use hypnosis as part of the practice, which was very common in the early days of the SPR. That was uh, one of its key elements of investigation. They dropped it after I don't know 10 years maybe because it was considered by then to be a science. Well, I'm unimpressed by anything that comes out under hypnosis because the number one thing that hypnosis does is it makes you want to please the hypnotist. And if it's self hypnosis, that may be useful for something like, having a positive attitude towards life. But if it's accessing specific information or anything of that sort, uh, it's self deception. Unless, of course, you're a psychic, in which case you don't need magical memory. You need uh, memory. You need an act of will,
mm,
or use an oracle like the I Ching or the tarot or astrology even.
yeah. One of the questions we got is it's a continuation of Tim's question. He says also talk about the dangers around evocation that are unique to practices like that. Where does evocation give you an edge? He said he's had bad experiences when invocation has gone a bit sideways and has effectively become unintentional evocation. How useful does Alan think the grimoire tradition is?
I really wish he would describe exactly what. I mean, does he start out trying to evoke information from a
I think
uh,
invoke. I think he started off invoking and it became
uh,
evoking.
uh, that's not nearly as dangerous as the reverse. If you try to evoke and something uh,
Pops
finds a
in.
material basis, which is the key to invocation, there has to be a material basis because these beings are not material in our sense of material, and uh, they have to have a material basis. There are ways to do that, some of which are not suitable for a program that children may be listening to. But I think a lot of your listeners can figure that out, and I certainly hope so. So, am
um,
I being sufficiently vague on that so as not to get you thrown off the air?
so how do you also he asked how useful does Alan think the grimoire tradition is?
As historical understanding of how magic works, it is very useful. As a foundation, it is exceedingly useful. But there are modern texts that deal with modern ways of thinking that build upon the grimoire tradition, which itself built upon Greco-Roman tradition and older Egyptian tradition, and to some extent Mesopotamian tradition. But the further back you go, the purer the magic is, but also the likelihood that you're going to really understand what the actual purpose was is lesser.
Mm.
The lesser key of magic. So,
That's like perennialism, isn't it? It's like the further back you go, the purer the magic becomes. It's
well, have you seen those magical bowls that they have found in Egypt that have intricate texts around the edges of them? And they were obviously meant for scrying. And what they say in very bad Hebrew or Aramaic, I don't speak Aramaic, and I can read some of it, but it's now I know the nouns, but I don't know the connective. Anyway, suffice to say this: you need to ground. If you're a serious magician, you need to ground yourself in the well-known, including some of the darker ones, the well-known grimoires that, as they stand now, are translation of a late medieval text. All of them, in my opinion, even if it is the Grimorum Verum, the true grammar, roughly translated. And
so, someone in the chat has asked.
wait,
Which,
I need to finish that because I think once you have assimilated that information and maybe tried a couple of things, then go to book 4 or the Voodoo Gnostic Workbook or or even, I hate to say this, the Book of Shadows. They're all based on that material, but in a somewhat modern form, even as in the Book of Shadows. It attempts to seem like, uh, as Gardner called his first draft, ye book of ye art magical.
there's quite a few good books. I mean, I quite like Don Michael Craig's book,
Oh yeah,
Modern Magic, or what is the Irish guy? What's his name? A Magical Primer. I've forgotten his name. Conway, David Conway. His book's
yeah,
very good. Um,
very good.
yeah, Magical. I mean, there's so many good modern primers, aren't there? I mean, out there now that kind of.
People have. I heard this a very long time ago. I'm not even sure if I was doing active magic at that point. But this guy that I knew in the local science fiction club said, as a criticism of magic, he was a total materialist. He said, you know, occultism looks backwards. That is, it prizes the oldest form uh, of truth, whereas science looks forward. It looks towards the next uh, realization. And I'm not saying that as well as he did, but I think you get the point. I don't think that that's necessarily true, but what is true is older is not inherently ipso facto better. So you do need the grounding. I mean, if you're going to study medicine, you probably should have read Paracelsus and other classics, even though some of the things they advised uh, were
a bit out of date.
or a
Yeah,
bit dated. Eh? What?
I've always said magic is the science of the internal, and science is the magic of the external. That's the way I sort of look at it. It's that seems to work quite well. But someone has asked in the chat, which book do you recommend for opening the third eye that is fully illustrated, detailed, and practical?
Wow.
That's-
Book. The Book by Alan Watts. There you go. Third Eye. Guaranteed or double your money back. Uh,
you sound like Bob
I,
Dobbs there.
the less flippant answer is, if you want to open the third eye, do Shana or Chan or Zen, which is the same thing in different cultures, sitting meditation, or if you're very dedicated, do Kundalini yoga. That'll open your third eye. The trick is, it's very hard to close that third eye anytime once it's open. And if you read the books by Gopi Krishna, they give you a good idea of why you need to be very grounded before you approach anything that radical.
Daniel Ingram, who we had on the show recently, is a good person as well. He's a Buddhist that was kind of outlawed from Buddhism for claiming he was enlightened, and then taught people how to practically, open their third eye and become awakened and all this kind of stuff. But he's an interesting guy. I'd look into him personally, but that was a good episode, that one. Right, questions. Does Alan see a crossover from occult ritual evocations to summoning UFOs? Is there a danger summoning UFOs without incorporating the fail-safes, embellishing an exorcism used in occult evocation?
Well, yeah, there's in the lore of ufology, there's a whole school of thought going back to the very, very early days, prior to even the term UFO, let alone whatever that current silly term is, when it was still called flying saucers, and goes back to borderland sciences, which was 1 foot in UFO stuff, as we would call it more recently, and 1 foot in magic, because Mead Lane, as I say in The Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts, I think I may have been the first to point it out. Mead Lane was a, a very advanced magician in an era that didn't have a lot of advanced magicians, 1940s and 50s. Anyway, your turn. You've got to prod me. Where was I going with that?
I'm not 100% sure. I think had you veered off a bit there?
No. I was the relationship between UFO stuff.
Yeah.
And, um, there is a school of UFO stuff going back to the 1940s, which is basically trans-channeling the beings that are responsible for UFOs and a lot of other phenomena. And I have discussed this in I think I discussed it in detail in Secret Rituals of the Men in Black, talking about Ashtar, because there's a whole, I don't want to call it a cult, because I don't really know how, hail bop oriented these people are. But basically, they do what mediums and general trance channels, like the lady that did the Seth material, uh, did, but it's in a UFO context. In other words, the Light Lines community in Kentucky which I knew them very well. They channeled the raw material, and that was volumes and volumes and volumes that only ended when the main channeler died under tragic circumstances. That was a guy named Don Elkins, who I knew, and actually saw him perform. I use that term guardedly. In that sense, those people who tend to be somewhat cultic in their approach, but they think that the messages from beyond are from the space people, the UFO people, whatever. And indeed, I think, although I don't think they are space people, I think they are other,
interdimensional people.
yeah, interdimensional. That even I'm even guarded about the term dimension because I it's unfortunate that the term that they use is abbreviated when they talk about in physics about other dimensions. They refer to them as branes, BRANES, and I hate having to spell it out. They don't mean the brain, BRAIN, in your head. They mean membranes. And why they don't just call them membranes, that would be a much clearer thing. But they're not from Alpha Centauri or some of these fictional planets that they claim to be from. I will say this, just as an aside, in case your questioner is experiencing this. If you practice some form of magic, advanced magic especially,
Sorry, I'm not yawning at you. I'm yawning because it's late.
you will probably see UFO manifestations around you outside of your magical practice. It just seems to go together. It's like the thing that I say that every time I would read a book by Philip K. Dick, I would have a series of synchronicities that invariably followed reading the book. That happened for years until I ran out of books. I mean, I've read everything that he wrote. So, but it's the same sort of thing. The synchronicities are kind of a byproduct or result of reading the mind twisting approach that Phil Dick used in all of his works, but especially his well, it didn't get to be that old, but his late works from the
like Valis and things like that. Yeah. Yeah.
well, starting in the 1970s and going through right, the posthumous Albemuth book, which may have been a first draft of Valis, but those books for that last 10 years of his life, from 44 to 54, that was his age, not the time he was writing those. They're very profound and mind-challenging book. And
I still think the best one is the Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch. That's still my favorite.
well, yeah, that's before that. And my best comment on that is I read it when it was first came out, which was something like 1964, and I didn't understand it at all. But I came back.
Yeah, it took me a few reads.
Yeah, it definitely is one of those that you need to reread several times before you get what it's all about. And of course, if you've read his biographical stuff, it's more autobiographical than it initially seems to be.
Yeah, I really like. There's a short story. Is it a short or is it? I fallen up. The one called Galactic Pot Healer I've always really liked as well, where it's like it's very Lovecraftian. There's like a creature under the sea, and it goes very Lovecraft at one point. But
Yeah, he
it's
puts
very
it on another planet, and this creature called the Glimung is kind of the actual protagonist of the story. Very short book,
Mhm.
but it basically deals with the notion of uh, a universal mind,
Mhm.
which is where the book ends up. So, yeah,
If you,
that's why I think I was having the synchronicities right after reading Man in the High Castle, for example. But if you're doing any kind of magic, the side effects will include things like if you're a hunter, you're going to encounter Mothman or Bigfoot or something. It just goes with it. And if you're uh, oriented towards looking up, uh, you probably are going to see UFOs.
Mhm.
It goes with the territory, and it isn't like if you close down the ritual in a proper way. That doesn't mean you stop being a magical person.
Mhm.
So expect magical things to be drawn to you, whether it's ghosts or flying saucers.
Mhm.
I think that
Yeah,
actually answers the question as well as it could be answered.
we've got someone in the chat. I think he means I think he means Taoism. He spelled it with a D, but do you? I'll stick it up on the screen. Do you know the third eye has different stages and layers in Taoism? They have the heavenly eye, the wisdom eye, the Dharma eye, and the Buddha. And then he said, yeah, I think he means your thoughts on Tibet Bon shamanic magic and Taoist magic.
Well, I have more thoughts on Vajrayana, the Tibetan magic, than I have on Taoism per se. Um, I mean, I'm acquainted with it. I've read the basic text, but
And if you've done
uh,
any sex magic, what I'm learning, because I'm reading about Taoism quite heavily at the moment, and you can really
well,
see the root of a lot of this Crowley, especially Crowley's sex magic. He definitely liked himself a bit of Taoism. You can tell that much.
yeah, Westerners that try to understand a philosophy that is, I'll put it this way. There was a book that was very influential on me when I was a kid. It was called Teachings of Tibetan Yoga by Garma C.C. Chang, obviously Chinese from the name, not Tibetan. But it had an introduction from this guy whose name was John Wilson. I mean, this was early 60s. Uh, I don't know whether he is still around or not, but I'm going to trash him. The introduction was all about sex magic, but you read the text on Tibetan yoga, i.e., Tibetan Buddhism, with a sprinkling of the pre-Buddhist Bon religion of Tibet, which is the unique thing about Tibetan Buddhism that separates it from uh, Mahayana Buddhism in general, the greater vehicle, so-called. Um, the guy sees it all as sex, 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 sex. And while heaven knows I don't have any problem with sexual magic of any sort, nevertheless, that isn't the be all and end all of Vajrayana Buddhism. It is an aspect, and the guy was getting it uh, very, very wrong in the introduction. And at the time, I was like 16. Of course, I thought, well, yeah, that's what it's all about. But in rereading it more recently, I realized, well, a lot of it involves very familiar techniques of meditation, but also visualization, which does indeed involve opening of the pineal gland or the third eye, or whether you want to see it as a physical thing or a uh, something beyond the physical.
Well, most
And
people think that it's the same with tantra, isn't it? Most people think that the sex side of it is a huge side of it. It's actually a very small side of it.
very small,
Mhm.
and you will see books. I don't know, real contemporary, but there was a book that basically defined Hindu Tantra as pretty much a big, big school of Hindu religion. Well, Hinduism uh, is a very diverse
Mhm.
religion
Oh
with
yeah, it's like a mishmash of lots of different styles
deities.
yeah. It's like there's a really good book. I can never pronounce his surname. It's like Fernstein, I think it's Tantra: The Path of Ecstasy. That's a really good book.
Yeah.
That talks that's a very good introduction, I'd say, to Tantra if anyone's interested in Tantra. But
Well, if you meet Indian tantrics, they don't think of sitting in a circle and exchanging partners for sex in order to violate one of the rules of the Hindu culture. And in Tibet, the monks are basically well, they're monks. Their chastity is one of their ways of life. They manage to do, like, there's a practice called raising the bindu, and as near as I can tell, not having done this myself, it's somewhat like Cariza in the West, and most people who have a kind of quasi-thelemic view of magic will recognize Cariza as uh, having sexual relations without orgasm,
mhm.
and that supposedly raises the Kundalini or
Well, it's the
the
same as Taoism. Taoism's got the same. Mantak Chia writes about that all the time. There's a really good book which UC's back recommended to me. I can something.
physically, it's a very bad idea if you value your prostate, folks.
Yeah. We did have another question from the Discord. With regard to Alan's use of exorcism post ritual, can Alan give an overview of his method and why it's efficacious? I can never pronounce that bloody word. Efficacious.
Hmm.
We often hear a lot about banishing, not so much about exorcism.
Well, as corny as it sounds, if nothing goes wrong in the ritual, uh, I dismiss it with the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, done my way, which is slightly different from the classical way, the way that Crowley describes it before him. Well, I guess it wasn't before him, or in his earlier phase in the Golden Dawn. That is, I often say, and I honestly don't remember where I first heard it, that the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram is certainly not lesser. It just means simpler. And if you are looking to really, 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 really get rid of something and don't want to resort to exorcism, which is a much more serious process, and you really have to have the magical chops to be able to do an exorcism. Um, uh, for something that is a bit persistent or that you get a very heavy feeling from the early on. I was told that the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, known, memorized perfectly and performed perfectly, is sufficient to cross the great abyss between Tiferet and Keter. And if you're using the tree of life, the Chaim, as a metaphor for ascent, that is quite saying something. It means it's more powerful than the Lord of the Abyss and uh, uh, capable of uh, the most fiendish, uh, hellish things that may exist out there or may exist in within you. That is quite sufficient. Now, if that doesn't work, then I go straight to the polite exorcism, which is something like the Wiccan, which is based, in the same tradition, which is something to the effect of go into your uh, uh, homeland in the summerland and let there be peace between thee and me, or something of that sort, using the four corners, which is basically using the classical elements. Or beyond that, I go to the classical exorcisms, which I uh, either have memorized in Latin, which I don't, I Latin, advanced Latin, especially liturgical Latin. I have no idea what I'm saying, but I've memorized them correctly, and I use the lesser one from, I think it's from the Lesser Key of Solomon, but it may be from, I don't remember which one, but one of the other grimoires, standard grimoires, has that series of three, and it starts out basically saying, "I conjure you to return unto you," and you have to put oomph behind it. I conjure you, fill in the blank, the name. That's why it's important to get the name of what it is you're dealing with. To return to your, and then the second one, which I've never had to go to, but it it tortures the being into going back to where it came from. And the third one basically excommunicates the entity. I mean, it just says, "And you shall return unto the depths of hell. The seventh hell awaits you. And I now say, go with all of your magical energy," which by that point, you're pumping a lot of adrenaline and you're putting a lot into it. And uh, that should handle anything that you are capable of conjuring up. And if it doesn't, my advice would be to run like hell. But I've never had to go that far. Generally speaking, the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, given that when I do induction, well, this is going to be a little bit boring, but have you got 2 minutes for me to describe what I do? Okay, to do before I open the session, I believe I've told you this before, but I think it was on your other program. The one where you have the famous people.
You've been on that a few times. I think you've been on that 3 times, haven't you?
Yeah, I don't count, but yeah, I'm sure that it's been 3. It might even have been 4, but that was back in the day when you weren't getting all these famous people, unlike poor little Alan. But I'm just giving you a hard time. I'm exercising you.
Hello, Raymond. Raymond's just joined.
Okay.
Yeah,
Where was I? I divert myself. um, if it was important, I don't remember it. If it was unimportant,
you were talking about your method. You were going to tell us what you did, what you do. You said,
for the induction.
mhm.
Okay. See, all I need is the word. Ken, just give me say the word is induction.
I still
And
think I need a button I press.
Alzheimer's induction.
I think I need to wire up a diode to you, and every now and then I have a button I press, and you just go, "Ooh," and it jerks you back into.
Oh, yeah. Hello, I'm Alan. Okay. Alan says that what he does to do the induction is, first of all, formulate your magical intent. You might actually write that down. You know, my intent with the following ritual is to evoke, invoke, go to, conjure up, whatever it is. And then I do the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, in order to cleanse the space, much lesser point there. Then I do the lesser invoking ritual of the hexagram to consecrate the sacred space. Then I do why am I saying Liber Astarte? Definitely not. It's
Resh, maybe.
no, I don't do Resh. Resh would be, it's not a, it's a thing unto itself, a salute to the hours of the sun.
Oh, yeah. What is that?
It's I've done it's the ritual of the bloody star is what I call it, but
I forgot what it's called. It will come to us anyway. But yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then I do the full version of Liber Reguli, which is there's a simplified version, and you need a lot of space to do I guess you would call it the dance in it. And then I do the opening of the ritual. So there's a lot that goes into not just the physical preparation of the space, but into making that space receptive to what you're there for. And in general, you don't have to do those things in reverse. I would cringe at the notion of doing reguli in reverse. It's a complicated ritual, and it is worth memorizing and worth learning well. But it's
Ooh,
the ruby, the ruby star. Is that what it's called?
Star Ruby.
Star Ruby. I know it's Ruby Star. You remember her? She was a stripper in New Orleans. Ruby Star.
I've missed a question, by the way. We've got another question that I completely missed. But
See,
anyway.
I've memorized these rituals, and I don't use the name. I don't say, and now the Ruby Star, starring Alan Greenfield as the magician. And no, I just do them. And at a certain point, it becomes a process that you do, not a literary device that you have memorized or read or whatever.
It's like the LBRP. The LBRP is internalized now with me anyway. It's just like it's a process now.
Yeah, that I do without any reference to anything else because I've been doing that for 50 some odd years.
Raymond asks, how long does each ritual take to complete?
That varies according to the ritual, but I would say most rituals are an hour or less.
Mhm. Yeah. Right, I missed a question from Tom earlier on. Can we ask Alan what it means to be a Thelemite today? Is it just another cringe club? Is there any worth in it? What are his thoughts on self-initiation? A lot of aspirants today don't want robes and Victorian memorabilia. They want to wake up. What does he think?
That's a three-part question,
Yeah,
really.
that's a long one.
Okay.
So let's
Um,
start with the first one. What does it mean to be a Thelemite today? Is it just another cringe club? Is there any worth in it?
yes, I saw that when you sent me that. That was
Mhm.
an advanced question. Um, I don't call myself a Thelemite anymore simply because at some point I realized, or I came to understand that uh, the Thelemic religion, and I was never thinking of it as a religion when I was into it, is sort of Ayn Rand's philosophy with some magical razzle dazzle thrown in. And it isn't anything more than that. You don't need to have an ism to be a magician. Any kind of ism. You don't have to have be conservatism or liberalism or uh, Marxism or whatever floats your boat in order to be able to do magic. Magic is a thing unto itself, and the death of it is if you called it magicism, which fortunately is probably the first time you've ever heard that term. And I hope I haven't started something because dogma has no place in real magic. And the reality is that I can't tell you what the handful of people that were involved in Thelemic magic thought back in Crowley's lifetime, because there was a gap between 1950 and the late 1960s in which it was very hard to find anybody that was interested in Crowley, let alone in Crowley's religion of Thelema. Having said that, though, it doesn't mean that some of the practices that have arisen as part of the Thelemic universe uh, are not worth doing. And what I think about a solitary practitioner is I'll send you a charter and you can form your own group of 3 or something. Don't do magic where you don't have anybody to tell you you've gone off the deep end, pal. Watch a lot of cartoons on television, or whatever the equivalent is. It's very easy to become obsessive in the magical universe if you're relatively new to it. The only real value that group work has, in my opinion, is as a support group. And to some extent, there are thelemic organizations that act as a support group. The problem is they also have a dogma, they have a leader, and leaders and dogma are the death of any kind of good spirituality. It's best to have a decentralized approach, but doing it alone, therein lies madness.
Mhm.
So,
I like
uh,
that saying, if you meet a Buddha on the road, kill him." That kind of sums up what you just said in some ways.
yeah, I think so. And I will say this, the initiations in the OTO
Mhm.
uh,
If
are,
performed correctly. If performed correctly. Mm.
well, they rarely are in my experience, but particularly uh, the first degree if there's a female candidate and there's nudity involved, somehow the maxim, this should be done in total darkness. The darkness is never total when it's a female candidate. Make of that what you will. I know what I make of it, and it was,
It wasn't dark enough when I did my first degree, I can tell you that. But
nor mine. And I'm a very private person. And nevertheless, at the door, I was told by this geeky guy, "Sir, strip."
We should probably, I don't know, we should probably let people experience the surprise of that initiation.
No, I think probably you should know in advance. They used to have a policy in the OTO of you got to read the oaths before you took the degree, which I think is the honest way to do it. I don't like magical oaths anyway because they're very archaic. But what's good about the initiation rituals is all cribbed from Freemasonry. I mean, there are words that are changed. The name of the hidden master, which is from Haram Abif, which is what the Masons are now going to come to my apartment, and I'm going to have to behead them at the door with my special katana for that purpose. One more Mason goes to... Anyway, so there's... the rituals themselves are fine. The hierarchical structure that the rituals bind you to with dire blood oaths, depending on the degree, are totally unacceptable to me. And there have been occasions where I have used variations of those in order to communicate some particular thing. But I always say before we start, consider these oaths to be of a purely traditional ritual nature, not binding upon you or upon me. And then, I go on from there.
One form of Thelemite that took them to the extreme, I'd say, would be what's his name, Ron Hubbard from Scientology. He makes you sign a billion-year contract. So
yeah, well, that is very OTO influenced. I mean, it's also influenced by when you get into the upper Scientology degrees, it sounds a lot like pulp fiction from the 1930s and 40s. Not coincidentally, since that's what Ron Hubbard was doing for a living in the 1930s and 40s.
Before we've still got two parts of this question to go. So let's round it off. So you think being a Thelemite today? I don't know. I still probably consider myself a Thelemite, if I'm honest. But
I consider myself a free illuminist, and that covers everything that I'm willing to cover. But it doesn't mean that I think that people who consider themselves to be Thelemites are evil people. That's not where it's coming from. It's just that I think the term, like, not all Muslims are Islamists, but I don't want to be associated with Islamists, period. So if somebody says they're a Muslim, I say, what? Well, are you a Sufi? Or, I mean, you really have to qualify it. And, the more decentralized something is, and there are people who consider themselves Thelemites who are affiliated with no organized body of manifestation.
I know loads of those. Yeah, I know plenty of Thelemites that aren't OTO or AA or anything. They're just
but they're mostly ex OTO or ex AI or
there's
whatever.
a lot of them. Yeah, but
I once, Bill Heydrich, who just passed away very recently, may he rest in peace. He should have been the head of the OTO, in my opinion. Better than Billy. Um, uh, he used to be the record keeper of the OTO, and his approach was a good deal more flexible, shall we say, than basically the one version of the AA, or maybe two, because there are several, and the legal OTO
Mm-hmm.
are run by people who were with Marcello Moda in his little uh, South American wrinkle on what Thelema was all about. And they were all thrown out of by Moda, but they all somehow wound up in the AA or OTO.
Mm-hmm.
And I would call that a hostile takeover.
Can we get back to the original question, because I'm running out of time because I've got to go to bed soon? So can we go back to the second part of the
There
question?
is value in the material, whether you choose to call yourself a Thelemite or not, depends on whether you read Atlas Shrugged or not.
So what are your thoughts on self-initiation?
I kind of did answer that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you can do self-initiation, but it's a very good idea to go to someone who has the particular, uh, one of the titles that I don't often use now because it got associated with particularist religions that I don't happen to be where I'm coming from, which is bishop. But I have the mojo from that, and I have observed that that particular mojo is such that if you have it and you do the classical laying on of hands and anointing of someone, you can pass all of your, or a portion of, depending on what you want to do, of your magical, well, not your, uh, it's not intellectual knowledge, but it's your uh, magical ability to do whatever it is that you intend to do. Uh, it it can be passed on. I would say that my approach has always been when I do that or charter a lodge or whatever, it's with the notion that once it's done, I have no further say in the matter, and neither does anybody else.
Mm.
And that's the approach that I've taken. In fact, some people have asked me about, whether I learned anything from the OTO, and I said, well, one thing I learned was be decentralist and don't get people to swear allegiance to a particular human being, living or dead. That's a no in my
Mm.
universe. Um, so you can self-initiate, but if you get the opportunity, and everybody has it because the free illuminist movement is larger than any organized body of manifestations, decentralized. If Can you give me a general idea of where this person is located physically?
He's in the UK.
Where?
UK, yeah, in England. He's
Okay.
here,
Well,
West Country, I believe.
there are like 5 different people who I personally have empowered, with everything that I have in England. I don't think she would mind my mentioning Amadali, who lives, I think, in London. She came to Prague to get the mojo from me during the Great Prague working. So she can give it to anybody who, within her particular approach. In other words, you don't have to travel very far
A,
unless you live in outer Mongolia.
a lot of self-initiation is attached to a group anyway. So things like the Typhonians, that's all self-initiation, and that. But
Yeah, but that's because the Typhonian OTO got cracked down on
Mhm.
by.
But it's always been self-initiation, though. Even when it was the Typhonian ATO, I think it was always self-initiation. There was a group and a lodge, but I think the actual initiations were Grant's ones. At least have always
As
been.
near as I can tell, in most cases, that's the way Crowley did it. He
Mm.
sent people the papers, which all of the initiations that were common, which was Minerval through third, were. I mean, I didn't conjure this up. In Magic Without Tears, in one of the letters that he sends to, was it Jane Wolfe? He says, I'm sending you the papers on the first degree. Translation, he didn't have to see her. She can read it, and that has his.
Mm.
But that isn't the same thing as self-initiation. That is distant initiation. That
Mm-hmm.
is,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you
yeah.
said, make me a bishop, Alan, I said, by the power vested in me by Jesus Christ and the 12 dwarfs, I hereby. No, I believe in it is better to do an in-person thing, but you don't have to like the person, or and if they want to charge you for it, you can say something with very impolite Anglo-Saxon terminology and leave. But
I mean, Crowley had those. He had a, was it Pyramidos? That's a self-initiation, isn't it? That's.
yeah,
Mm.
but it lacks something that you can only gain from someone
Mhm.
laying hands on you.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I'm much more into group initiation. Like in-person initiation, personally. But and fine. The last question I'll have to ask you, because Tom will tell me off if I don't. Have you seen the Odyssey, and do you also think it's shit? Is what Tom's asked.
No and yes.
I quite enjoyed it. I
I
don't
think
know. I thought it was all right.
it was, well, I'm sure with the kind of budget and the kind of talent that went into it, that it is impressive. And the fact that it was filmed in IMAX to be seen in IMAX is, it tempts me to actually get out of my apartment and go to the theater.
Have you got
Uh,
an IMAX in Georgia?
oh yeah, we got lots of IMAX. Almost every theater is a multiplex. So there are
Mhm.
like 8 theaters, and one of them is IMAX, and it costs more.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
but yeah, the next IMAX movie that I will see in a theater will be Dune 3,
Mhm.
and because that was also filmed not in IMAX but for IMAX. In other
Yeah,
words,
it was digital. It was shot, I know the DP of that film. It was shot on, medium format lenses, but as I'm getting into nerdy territory there, Raymond, who is also used to be a Georgia resident, recommends the Mall of Georgia, apparently.
yeah, a good place. If you don't mind steps, Atlantic Station's IMAX theater, that's where I saw Dune 2
Mhm.
with my son Randall, was is an excellent theater complex that is what uh, cinema should be like. Um, I mean, I go back to
Oh, that's awesome.
Cinerama.
Mhm. Yeah, it's true. So I think that's us for we've done a solid 2 hours now. I think that's a.
Okay, give me before we go. Give
Mhm.
me an online grade on the ravings that I have put forth in this
Well,
session of the Greenfield Files.
What from the chat? Do you mean?
Well, for, if there's one that says Greenfield is a shithead, he should shut up. Please read it, and I will comment on it. But I was saying, I always ask you after we go off, did we do okay? Did I wander too far? Did I say
Yeah,
something
I think it was okay this time.
offensive to the king? What have I
That's
done wrong?
my job is to rein you in. So I think I think I'm getting better at it. I don't know. I think the last few have all been very good actually. But personally,
I think this one and the previous one are, you know, they're A-list. Before
Mhm.
that, we were still trying to find,
Oh,
the
rhythm.
rhythm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, it's been very good. Do you have anything you need to plug? What's your Substack and things like? I think normally.
No, no, I don't want to plug the Substack because that's where I have a select. I mean, anybody can join it. It's free, unlike most stuff on Substack. There is no paid anything. But uh, that's my test audience. In other words, I things that are destined to be in an anthology, I first put up there, and if it gets a lot of thumbs up, it winds up in a book. If it gets a lot of thumbs down, it winds up in Oblivion, which
Oh,
is a planet around Alpha Centauri 3.
Frank Sidebottom has just said, "My first impression of Alan he is a wise and experienced practitioner." Thank you, Alan.
Oh, thank you. My current book, which is very short, is Flying Saucers and the Occult, and it was actually composed for the Substack, which it got a favorable review from just about everybody. So it wound up in a book with my new publisher, and I just got my first royalty check. So uh, it's not like it's a lot of money, but it validates that I actually wrote some stuff that was useful to people. So Flying Saucers and the Occult is current, and all my other books are in print. You can buy them from Amazon, Amazon UK, Barnes and Noble, and as I
I've,
always say, wherever
I've
fine books are sold.
I have two obscure ones here. I have The Grail Within and Christ and the Master Therion, the two Greenfield
And
originals.
well, one of those is in print. The other one, I lose it.
That one's in print, isn't it? The Grail Within.
Oh yeah, that's in
Yeah.
print. I
The-
thought it would be a big seller, but I missed. It's a whole program. What happened to sex magic? We can do that next month or
oh yeah, yeah,
sometime,
yeah. We should do that.
because I thought for sure that that book would be, a bestseller,
Mhm.
because it says things about that subject that nobody else has said except possibly, I don't know, way, way back. Lewis Culling was talked about his own experiences, and
Mhm.
nobody liked Lewis Culling except me, apparently.
I've heard that this is a scoop, but apparently two practitioners of sex magic are about to set up an OnlyFans. You know,
Oh, okay.
but the idea is that it's the reason they've done it on OnlyFans is because that's the only platform that they could do it on. They're going to be doing a practical guide, so physical, showing the
Well, not that I'm interested, but could I get a free membership?
I've well, weirdly enough, I was offered a free membership to that because they're listeners to the show. They might even be in the chat now. I don't know, but at least one of them.
Well,
But yeah, so
if it were free, I'm a poor man, and but I am interested, and I have written a few things on the subject. So
I'll,
if you need an endorsement, whatever. But
but they are serious practitioners, and the reason it's on OnlyFans, like I said, is because it's over there or Pornhub, basically, isn't it? It's the only place on the internet they can put it. But apparently, it's going to be a
one
full series, which should be
one
interesting.
time, my then wife and I got this guy who goes by the name Weirsley. to film us doing a sex magic ritual, a very important one. It's in that book called Scrying in the Flesh. But right after we got through, I turned to the guy who was filming it and I said, erase that.
Yeah. Was there? Yeah, I was going to say, was it like in the background? But anyway, it's been good to see you again. We'll be back next month, and as always, thank you for watching. And we have episodes coming up. So episodes of the main show, we have the return of Nicholas Schreck. We're doing that live as well. That's going to be a live one. I'm going to need early ritual for that one because he has
the well-named Nicholas Schreck. Yes.
Yeah, we have. He has some interesting followers, let's put it that way, that may need moderation, because that's going to be live. We've also got, who else have we got coming up? I can't remember now. We've got loads of stuff coming up. What else? And then videos almost ready. I keep saying that, so I'm just not going to mention the other content until it's ready now, because I keep saying it's ready and then I hate it and they redo it. But yeah,
it's the important people as opposed to just plain Alan.
You've got your own show. I mean, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
But anyway, right. We'll see you next time, next month. And thanks for everyone for in the chat for
thank all the people with questions, and thank the people who didn't have questions but who listened anyway. And especially thank you, Ken, for allowing me this forum.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And we will see you guys next month.